In the Priabonian, the Qasr el Sagha formation marked a shifting shoreline along the Faiyum where transgressive sands and muds built a broad coastal fringe at the edge of the Tethys. Its rocks read like a tide calendar: coastal mudflats, brackish swamps, tidal flats and storm-scoured channels, stacked into parasequences whose tops are often crowded with shells. Geochemical and sedimentary clues point to warm, evaporative, shallow marine conditions under a subtropical to arid climate. These nearshore habitats hosted dense molluscan communities and a diverse littoral fauna of sharks and rays. Sea cows grazed the shallows, while basilosaurid whales cruised just offshore, their remains recorded in Qasr el Sagha horizons. Taken together, Qasr el Sagha captures a warm, tidally pulsed littoral world at the close of the Eocene, when rivers met a shallow Tethyan sea and early marine mammal ecosystems flourished. Emerging from the same warm, tidal-influenced coastal waters that nurtured whales and sea cows in the Qasr el Sagha formation, the cowtail stingray Pastinachus left behind its fossil teeth, tiny but telling relics of a bottom-dwelling hunter gliding across shallow marine floors. These dental remains, recovered alongside other ray and shark fossils in the Faiyum region, attest to its presence in the complex littoral ecosystem, feeding on invertebrates stirred from sands by tidal currents. While the earlier text evoked the grand sight of marine giants cruising that ancient Tethyan shoreline, Pastinachus invites us to peer closer, a subtle yet essential component of the ecosystem, sustaining the food web in quieter, sandy microhabitats. Among the shifting mosaics of tidal flats and swamps that framed this coastal world, Gigantophis embodied the terrestrial drama at the water's edge. Estimated at between 7 and over 10 meters in length, it rivaled or exceeded today's largest snakes, making it for a long time the record holder among serpents. Its massive coils would have lurked near rivers and marshes, where amphibious mammals like Peratherium or unsuspecting shoreline dwellers provided plausible prey. In contrast to the gliding rays or cruising whales described earlier, Gigantophis represents the silent power of the land-sea interface, a predator that reinforced the ecosystem's complexity from the ground up. Fossil turtles, including trionychids and cheloniids, basked and foraged in these lagoons and tidal channels, underscoring the diversity of reptilian life woven into the Eocene shoreline. Blending land and sea in its own way, Apterodon was a hyaenodont whose anatomy reveals a semi-aquatic and burrowing lifestyle unusual for its lineage. With forelimbs built for digging and a body streamlined for swimming, it likely prowled tidal flats and estuarine margins much as modern otters or pinnipeds do today. Its robust teeth suggest a diet of crustaceans and other hard-shelled invertebrates, linking it to the molluscan-rich habitats already evoked in this coastal ecosystem. In contrast to the giant constrictors or the gliding rays, Apterodon embodies a more furtive niche, an evolutionary experiment that tied mammalian predators to the shifting edge of sea and land. With its elongated skull and shearing dentition, Hyaenodon stood out as a specialized carnivore among the Faiyum's diverse predators. Unlike the semi-aquatic Apterodon, this hyaenodont was fully terrestrial, equipped with a robust body and cursorial adaptations that suggest an ability to pursue prey across open ground. Its jaw mechanics favored slicing flesh rather than crushing bone, hinting at a diet focused on fresh kills rather than scavenging, a niche different from the more opportunistic feeders of the ecosystem. Juvenile fossils reveal unusually slow tooth eruption, implying prolonged growth and a lengthy dependence on parental care. In the broader tapestry of the Eocene shoreline, Hyaenodon represents the landward edge of predation, complementing the aquatic hunters and giant reptiles that patrolled the waters nearby. The Sirenian Eoxiren grazed in the seagrass beds of these warm shallows, marking an early stage in the adaptation of sea cows from shorebound foragers to fully marine herbivores. Bothriogenys, an anthracothere bearing a superficial resemblance to a small hippopotamus with an elongated skull, adds a semi-aquatic ungulate layer to the ecosystem's tapestry. Its numerous fossils attest to its prominence in the Faiyum Depression assemblage, marking it as one of the earliest true anthracotheriids to diversify in Africa. With its likely affinity to later hippo-lineage mammals and adaptations echoing both aquatic and terrestrial habits, it bridges the watery niches of manatees and the more terrestrial predators already described, enriching our view of the land-sea boundary in motion. Sleeker and more compact than the serpentine Basilosaurus, Dorudon measured around 5 meters and filled the role of a mid-sized cetacean predator in these Eocene seas. Long mistaken for juvenile basilosaurids, its own juveniles revealed that it was a distinct lineage, bridging archaic Archaeocetes and the streamlined forms of modern whales. Its skull lacked the echolocating adaptations of later odontocetes, but its dentition shows it was well suited to seizing fish and smaller vertebrates in the shallows. Set against the backdrop of rays, sea cows, and coastal reptiles, it embodies the evolutionary experimentation that made the Tethyan shoreline a crucible for marine mammal diversity. More modest in size than Dorudon, Saghacetus reached roughly 4 meters, with a shortened skull and dentition hinting at a diet of small fish and coastal prey. Its abundance in the fossil record suggests it was one of the most common cetaceans of the Eocene tethys, occupying a niche closer to the shoreline than its larger relatives. In the unfolding panorama of rays, sirenians, and semi-aquatic mammals already described, Saghacetus represents the agile, nearshore hunters that wove speed and versatility into the seascape's dynamics. Sitting in size between Saghacetus and Dorudon, Stromerius is known chiefly from distinctive lumbar vertebrae that reveal a shorter, more rigid spine than in most other basilosaurids. These anatomical traits hint at differences in swimming style, perhaps favoring stability in nearshore waters over the undulating propulsion of its larger relatives. As part of the spectrum of Archaeocetes inhabiting the Eocene seaway, Stromerius underscores the evolutionary variety of locomotion strategies that flourished along this shifting coastline. In the early Oligocene, northern Egypt's Faiyum Depression was no desert but a warm, seasonally wet coastal plain, its rivers threading low forests on their way toward the tethys. Stratigraphy and magnetostratigraphy, anchored by radiometric ages from the overlying Widen-Elferous basalt, show that the Jebel Qatrani formation is chiefly early Oligocene in age. Its fluvial sandstones and variegated shales capture nearshore freshwater habitats rich in root traces, burrows and transported fossil wood. Plant macrofossils and palynology point to palms and mangrove elements fringing those waterways, a green mosaic rather than dunes. Crocodilians, podicnematid turtles and diverse fishes swam the channels while jacanas, early flamingo relatives, herons and even shoebills patrolled the marshes, an avifauna that signals slow, vegetation-choked freshwater. On land, Jebel Qatrani preserves a cradle of anthropoid evolution, Egyptopithecus, Opidium and many other primates, alongside early elephants, abundant hyracoids and powerful hyaenodonts. Taken together, these clues fix Jebel Qatrani as a humid, subtropical ecosystem at the dawn of modern African faunas, a river-laced forest where prehistoric Egypt breathed with heat and water. From delicate cranial fossils embedded in the Jebel Qatrani strata, Parachanna emerges as the oldest African snakehead, a striking reminder that this lineage colonized the continent long before the Miocene, reshaping our understanding of chanid dispersal. In its modern descendants, we glimpse a dim echo of that ancient predator, a sleek, air-breathing carnivore that prowls vegetated floodplains, stalking crustaceans, insect larvae and smaller fish with silent patience. Though separated by tens of millions of years, both fossil and living snakeheads paint a continuous portrait of adaptation to languid, plant-choked waterways. In the same languid lakes that sheltered Parachanna, the genus Clarotes appears, its fossil species embodying an ancient branch of Clarotiid catfish, already adapted to still, vegetated waters. Modern members of this genus mirror that heritage, with robust bodies and broad heads suited for bottom-dwelling ambush, evoking a continuous lineage of stealthy freshwater hunters. Though separated by epochs, Clarotes trace the same morphological thread, a predator refined for life in shaded, slow-flowing aquatic realms, weaving seamlessly into the tapestry of that tropical, water-rich world we've already begun to glimpse. Two crania and associated remains of lates show that perch-like predators were established in the Faiyum waterways by the early Oligocene, among the genus's earliest African records. Extant congeners such as the Nile perch are chiefly piscivorous but also take crustaceans and other invertebrates, so a comparable trophic role for the fossil taxon is a reasonable inference. Within the Faiyum sequence, lates occurs in channel deposits and is conspicuously absent from the very shallow lacustrine horizon. Paired with modern habitat use in deeper river and lake waters, this pattern points to a preference for more open, well-oxygenated reaches. The Faiyum beds yield abundant podicnematid side-necked turtles, their shells and limb bones attesting to a thriving population of freshwater grazers and bottom feeders in those floodplains. When Charles Andrews first described Crocodylus megarhinus in 1905 from a partial skull, he set in motion more than a century of debate over its affinities within the crocodilian lineage. Subsequent discoveries revealed a broad, triangular cranium whose proportions and dentition closely parallel those of the modern Nile crocodile, suggesting a direct ancestral link. Like today's river giants, it bore occlusal notches along the upper jaw to accommodate interlocking lower teeth, a design equally suited for gripping large prey in turbulent waters. The taxonomic tangle with Crocodylus articeps, now often considered a juvenile morph of the same species, only underscores the variability that must have existed in those populations. Set alongside the turtles, snakeheads, catfish and perch already evoked, it embodies the apex predator's role in the Faiyum's aquatic web, a powerful reminder of continuity between prehistoric and living Nile ecosystems. Towering as high as an emu but with heavier bones, Eremopezus was a flightless giant bird whose powerful legs and unusually splayed toes suggest a life spent striding through wetlands rather than sprinting across open ground. Its skeletal proportions hint at a cautious gait, perhaps adapted to soft substrates where balance and stability were more vital than speed. Sharing its reed-fringed habitat with crocodiles like crocodile and mammalian carnivores, it must have relied on size and agility of the toes to navigate shallow waters and avoid becoming prey, while exploiting a diet that may have ranged from swamp plants to mid-sized vertebrates. Nupharanassa, a giant jacana emerging from those ancient wetlands, is defined by a uniquely elongated tarsometatarsus bearing a dramatic, teardrop-shaped distal foramen, far larger than in any modern lily trotter and evoking the stately grandeur of majestic water lilies. Its presence marks the earliest African record of the jacanidae, suggesting that the delicate ballet of wading birds on floating vegetation had already evolved in the Oligocene. It would have glided gracefully across lily pads, a living link between the vegetation-draped river margins and the avian diversity woven through this prehistoric mosaic. Goliathia, known from an ulna and a massive tarsometatarsus, reveals a towering shoebill-like bird that stalked the swamps with a height approaching 2 meters. Its anatomy and scale suggest a formidable wader specialized in seizing lungfish and catfish, echoing the ecological role of the modern Balaniceps rex but in an earlier, wetter world. Set beside the delicate lily-trotter Nupharanassa, Goliathia adds a darker, predatory counterpoint to the avian chorus that animated those reed-choked floodplains. Palaeoephippiorhynchus, a great stork kin to today's saddle-billed giant, towered above the reeds with a frame built for patient, spear-like strikes at fish and amphibians. Its fossil record shows that the dramatic silhouette of long-legged, sharp-billed waders had already taken shape by the Oligocene, well before the rise of many modern African bird lineages. In the living mosaic of shoebill-like Goliathia, this enormous ancestral stork would have lent a vivid note of vertical grace and precision to the wetland symphony. Xenerodiops, a heron-like bird with a stout skull and a sharply down-curved beak, combined the silhouette of a night heron with the feeding style of a stork. Its unusual bill hints at a probing strategy in muddy shallows, seizing invertebrates, fish or amphibians with sudden precision. In the company of towering storks like Palaeoephippiorhynchus and the shoebill-like Goliathia, it added a smaller but no less distinctive thread to the wetland's complex avian fabric. Nycticorax, the night heron, is represented in the Faiyum beds by early Oligocene fossils that show the lineage's antiquity in Africa. Compact yet robust, with strong bills and relatively short legs, these birds were adapted for twilight hunting along reedy margins, taking fish, amphibians and invertebrates in quick strikes. Their presence complements the spectrum of heron-like forms, from the stork-billed Xenerodiops to the towering Palaeoephippiorhynchus, underscoring how varied the strategies of wading birds had already become. In this way, Nycticorax adds the quiet, crepuscular rhythm of nightfall to the vibrant chorus of the Faiyum's wetlands. Peratherium, most likely the earliest metatherian represented in the Faiyum record, is known from a handful of jaws and tooth-bearing fragments that mark the surprising presence of primitive marsupials among the floodplain's denizens. Small and agile, it likely scurried through the underbrush or muddied margins, snatching insects or small vertebrates in stealth, offering a subtle but key thread in the terrestrial food web. Positioned amid giants like Arsinoitherium and nimble herons, Peratherium reminds us that beneath the dramatic avian stage, a quieter caste of diminutive mammals played out their own evolutionary story. Hyraxes, today represented only by a few small, rabbit-sized herbivores, were astonishingly diverse in the Oligocene, ranging from nimble, gazelle-like browsers to bulkier forms that filled niches later occupied by antelope, pigs and even rhinoceros-sized grazers. This radiation was fueled by Africa's warm, well-watered landscapes, where the absence of competing ungulates allowed hyraxes to experiment with body size and feeding strategies on a scale unmatched in their lineage since. Titanohyrax, first described from the Faiyum's Oligocene strata, pushed the hyrax lineage to astonishing extremes, some species like Titanohyrax ultimus reaching rhinoceros-like proportions of nearly a ton. Its high-crowned, lophosolenodont teeth and fully molariform premolars point to a folivorous lifestyle, an adaptation to the dense vegetation that blanketed the floodplains. In the broader panorama of hyrax diversity, from rabbit-sized browsers to these hulking leaf-eaters, Titanohyrax epitomizes how absent ungulate competitors allowed hyracoids to radiate into roles that later mammals would claim. Antilohyrax stood out among the Faiyum hyracoids with its springbok-like limbs and deer-shaped muzzle, a fleet runner rather than the squat forager we associate with modern hyraxes. Its comb-like incisors, reminiscent of colugo, suggest a delicate browsing strategy, plucking tender leaves and shoots with precision. Set against the massive bulk of Titanohyrax, Antilohyrax embodies the remarkable ecological spread of hyraxes in this landscape, spanning nimble leapers to rhinoceros-sized giants. Arsinoitherium was the undisputed colossus of the Faiyum floodplains, a 3-meter-long browser weighing more than 2 tons and towering nearly 2 meters at the shoulder. Though its hulking silhouette and forward horns invite comparison to the rhinoceros, its true kinship lies with elephants and manatees, making it a peculiar branch of the Afrotherian radiation. Its most dramatic features were a massive horn pair above the nose and smaller knobs above the eyes, both sexes carrying them, perhaps for defense or display. The skeleton tells of a slow, deliberate creature, its forelimbs specialized for hauling itself through sticky floodplain soils and shallow swamps rather than galloping across open ground. Inside its jaws lay the full primitive count of 44 teeth, yet with a strikingly specialized chewing mechanism that pressed leaves and shoots steadily against enamel ridges, a precision tool for selective browsing. Reconstructions of its coastal forest habitat, warm and thickly vegetated, place this giant among palm groves and swamp thickets where hyrax herds, proboscideans and crocodiles also thrived. In the grand mosaic that also hosted hyraxes, Arsinoitherium filled the role of the ponderous, armored browser, shaping vegetation as much as the vegetation shaped it. Its enduring image, horns lifted above the reeds like living battlements, encapsulates the strange grandeur of a world both familiar in form and utterly alien in lineage. Phaeomia, a medium-sized early elephantiform standing over 1.5 meters at the shoulder, marks one of the earliest stages in the evolution of the elephant trunk, with a retracted nasal opening and muscle attachment suggesting a modest proboscis. Its upper and lower tusks, thin and curved above but broad and shovel-like below, likely functioned as versatile tools, perhaps used for gathering soft vegetation from the swampy ground or stripping bark. Amid the towering Arsinoitherium and giraffe-like avian predators, Phaeomia adds a vital evolutionary note, the first hints of the elephant's iconic trunk emerging among marsh-dwelling foragers. Palaeomastodon, larger and more robust than Phaeomia, stood over 2 meters tall at the shoulder and carried a body mass measured in several tons, anchoring it among the mightiest herbivores of the Faiyum landscape. Its skull reveals both maxillary and mandibular tusks, upper ones curved and downward pointing, lower ones broad and procumbent, framing a long diastema and lophidont cheek teeth that point to a mixed browsing diet. The retracted nasal opening and strong facial muscle attachment suggest the presence of a short trunk, while the elongated lower jaw likely housed a large, mobile tongue, giving this early proboscidean a feeding toolkit strikingly different from later elephants. It would have moved ponderously yet decisively, a living bridge between primitive elephantiforms and the colossal lineages that would come to dominate Africa's savannas. Rodents in the Faiyum wetlands were already highly diverse, ranging from small burrowers to squirrel-like climbers, exploiting seeds and vegetation in ecological niches largely untouched by larger herbivores. Catapithecus represents one of the oldest close relatives of Old World monkeys and apes, bridging a key stage in primate evolution. Palaeoephippiorhynchus, with its deep-rooted, procumbent teeth and enlarged canines, reveals a feeding adaptation strikingly reminiscent of the modern eye, likely gnawing into wood to extract hidden insects. Its large orbits point to nocturnal habits, while the angled skull and high muzzle place it firmly among strepsirrhines, close to the lineage of lemurs and lorisoids. Amid diurnal catarrhines like Catapithecus, this nocturnal insect hunter embodies the other side of primate life in the Faiyum, an evolutionary experiment in exploiting the dark, quiet spaces of the forest. Egyptopithecus, with its robust jaws, small brain case, and sexually dimorphic canines, captures a pivotal stage in primate evolution, standing as one of the earliest well-documented catarrhines. Its limb bones and grasping hallux point to a slow, deliberate arboreal quadruped, moving heavily among branches rather than leaping or suspending like later apes. Positioned in the same forests that sheltered insect-hunting Palaeoepithecus, it embodies the deepening diversification of primates in the Faiyum, laying the groundwork for monkeys and apes to come. Apterodon and its kin were agile, squirrel-sized primates, leaping and running along branches with a locomotion style reminiscent of modern squirrel monkeys. Their dental microwear and chipping patterns point to a frugivorous diet dominated by soft fruits, aligning with the lush tropical canopies of the Faiyum forests. Sexual dimorphism in body size and canine development suggests a social system of polygynous groups, with competitive males guarding access to multiple females. Unlike the slower, heavier Egyptopithecus, these primates represent the lighter, faster branch of early anthropoids, filling the canopy with movement and noise. In this way, Apterodon adds yet another dimension to the primate mosaic, underscoring the ecological variety that defined the Faiyum's arboreal world. Hyaenodonts were extinct carnivorous mammals of the order Hyaenodonta, apex predators of Paleogene Africa whose powerful jaws and shearing teeth allowed them to fill roles later taken over by big cats and hyenas. Bastetodon cerdos, a newly recognized hyaenodont from the Faiyum, was a formidable carnivore with slicing dentition suited for tearing flesh, echoing the ecological role later filled by big cats. First described as a species of Pterodon, its reclassification in 2025 followed the discovery of a more complete skull, which revealed enough distinct features to warrant its own genus. The name, honoring the feline-headed goddess Batet, evokes both its lethal dentition and its deep Egyptian setting. It embodies the ever-present tension between predator and prey in the Faiyum's ancient web of life. Bothriogenys, a prominent anthracothere, resembled a hippo-like artiodactyl with an elongated skull and robust body. Its abundance in the reservoir of fossils suggests a successful adaptation to these water-rich habitats. Juvenile specimens reveal that its dental eruption pattern paralleled that of early pigs more closely than that of modern hippos, shedding light on its developmental biology and phylogenetic position. The genus evolved within the Qatrani sequence, marking a local evolutionary lineage within the ecosystem. It dominated as a semi-aquatic browser, anchoring the landscape with its weight and grazing habits. Ptolemaea, a member of the enigmatic Afrotherian order Ptolemata, represents a wolf-sized, perhaps carnivorous or insectivorous mammal whose sparse remains hint at an unusual and obscure branch of early African mammal diversity. With its name rooted in the Ptolemaic dynasty and fossils first described in the early 20th century, it underscores how this lineage persisted uniquely in the Faiyum long after many other archaic groups had vanished. Although few specimens survive, their discovery among the reptiles, primates and proboscideans populating those swampy lowlands suggests Ptolemaea occupied a niche in the shadowy margins, rare, but vital in sketching the fullness of that bygone ecosystem.